I'm
Microphone. All right, look at that. Look at that fire in the background, Chris. That's a great cover. So, hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I have with us tonight special guest Travis Frank. Now, Travis is a dog handler. I'm going to say handler, Travis. I'm going to let him tell you who you are and what you do. I'm going to say dog handler, and you can correct my term because I know it's wrong. And I'll let him tell a little bit about you. Tonight's topic, before we get into Travis and what he's doing, is going to be the step-by-step process on tracking a deer. What do you do before you actually call the dog in? And then what do you do after? So there's a lot of questions on that, myself included. And I think this would be a great show tonight, learning on those steps. So, Travis, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to let you introduce yourself here a little bit, and we'll go into this.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name's Travis Frank. I handle a dog, my Denali. We've been doing this 5 years. I'm based actually out of Fallston, Maryland, but I cover a lot of southern, south central, southeastern PA. And we generally will say we're a tracking team. It's the dog and myself working together. The dog tends to be the star of the show. We put a lot of time in the woods, learning to read them and how to work a dog to try to recover hunter's deer.
So what's funny to this, guys, everybody watching, is that Travis and I actually commented on somebody's Facebook post. And we both had different outlooks to what the next step was. And, that kind of brought on, where do we go from here? And me, I jump on stuff like that. Like, hey, man, we need to get the steps down. So, Travis, I was always taught step one is, you make a shot, you wait your 2 hours, and then you go down and look for first blood. Is there anything incorrect in that?
That's not a terrible first step. Is give it, my general rule, what I tell hunters is, if you don't see it fall or hear it fall, give it at least 2 hours, and then go down, inspect your hit site. Try to find your arrow, your bolt. Try to find the sign if you have blood. It helps for us trackers, if it does get difficult later on, take pictures of everything. Even taking a picture from the stand, just on where you shot it, that just, trying to document everything, trying to treat it almost like a crime scene after the shot, and really trying to be meticulous and picking that apart.
It's actually great advice. I would have never thought to take pictures. So you already taught me something that I wouldn't even thought of.
Yeah, it's just really helpful if you do have to wind up calling in a tracking team. And it also builds a reference for the hunters to say, if my arrow looks like this shot was a double lung. If my arrow looks like this, it was a liver shot. So it just kind of helps build that database for the hunters too, to know how to read an arrow and what evidence there is at the hit site.
So I'm kind of just going to go to you from that point. So I get to my arrow, right? I get down there, I look, and I pick it up. Of course, let's say I have bubbles. If I get bubbles, I got lungs, right?
Not always.
There you go. So that's why we're going to you.
So that's one of the pretty common misconceptions in tracking a deer, and it drives us trackers nuts when you're looking on a Facebook post and it's bubbles, and everybody says that's a lung, that's lungs. It's not. All it means is oxygenated blood. So that can come from a muscle. If you clip some arterial blood, it's going to put bubbles in it. Sometimes just the friction on the hide can put bubbles into it. So when we see bubbles in the blood, it's not necessarily getting us excited. Now, the lung blood, you're going to see that it's going to be finer bubbles. It's going to be really tightly packed. Then we start saying, okay, that's lung blood. To be honest, by the time you're calling a tracker, you probably don't have lung blood. By the time you're calling a tracker, something happened that is making you call us, because if you double lung it, it's very rare that we get the call.
Gotcha. So what am I looking for? I get down to the arrow. What's good and what's bad in the arrow hit site? Tell me what you're looking at when you get there and you look at somebody's photo and somebody's arrow.
Well, so the biggest thing we're trying to determine, and arrows are misleading. There's not an exact science to it. That's why you have so many different opinions on them. I guess the most obvious one is when it's a solid gut hit, and you've got the green, you've got potentially some corn or grass matter or something on the bolt or on the arrow. That's a pretty good tell sign, and it smells. That's a pretty good indication that it's going to be a gut shot deer. And at that point, it's get out of the woods. That deer is going to need time to die. And so that's one of the easiest arrows to look at and say, all right, it stinks. I think my shot was back. The arrow says the shot's back. There might be some stomach contents at the hit site, or there might be some blood with corn or grit mixed into it. So that's kind of a textbook that something that deer is going to need a lot more time to expire. Gotcha. And then you got the graphic up there, the liver shots where you're going to see an arrow that's kind of generally more coated with a solid, thicker blood. And again, that needs now the wait times on that graphic, I would say, are totally off. A gut shot deer outside of the rut, you're going to talk a minimum 12 to 16 hours to let it expire. A liver shot 6 to 8 on outside the rut. And now in the rut where we are right now, it's not uncommon to jump a gut shot deer 24 hours after the shot. It's a pretty routine in the tracking world that, during the rut, we have to double kind of wait times. So those wait times are definitely on the low end, even for non-rut time. They probably need to be doubled outside of the rut at least. So
I think it's a good chart, but I love that you corrected time frames there. That's good.
Yeah, the two biggest thing for a tracker. Oh, I shouldn't say two. There's a few. Wait times. Dead deer don't run, and so making sure you give the animal the proper time to expire. If your gut shot, just mark the hit site. Preferably with some toilet paper or paper towels, not just on X. On X will get you in the vicinity. Toilet paper will get you spot on blood. So I always tell hunters, carry that in your pack. It's multi-use, and great for marking the blood trail. But the wait times are mission critical. A jump deer is so much harder to find than one that will die in its first bed. So the wait time's absolutely important.
So, and as a dog tracker, you hit the deer, you find first blood. What is it you want to see people do next? What's the next step for you?
So, if you made a good shot and it's going to be a dead deer, is like, go find your deer. If we can, if you can go find it yourself without calling a tracker, that's what hunting's all about. So go find it. But if you hit a deer and you have a question, you have your arrow seems off, or the deer didn't react the way you would have expected it to, especially if a hit back, it hunches up, walks off, as opposed to, taking off like a banshee through the woods. Call a tracker. The phone calls, it costs nothing to call us, talk out the shot, and you come up with a plan in terms of what's best. If if we feel that you don't need us and you can go back the next morning and find your deer yourself, we'll kind of tell you that. The benefit of the tracking community is we're fielding hundreds of calls a season on different arrows, different shots, and collectively as a tracking community, kind of in PA and Maryland, we're getting thousands of calls a year to track deer, and we're going on. I don't know the exact number, but I'm sure it's going to be in the thousands all told for all the trackers in the state and PA and Maryland. So we kind of have an idea what these deer do after they get hit and what the arrow looks like and how it reacted. So just call us if we feel like you're going to go find it. And it's always best to call a tracker even in the off season just to build that relationship, and that way it's not this kind of scramble to do.
You get a phone call, deer's hit, can't find blood. Tell me what you're doing from there.
Well, first most trackers, you're going to get a lot of questions. So tree stand on the ground, are you shooting a compound or a crossbow? We'll just stick, I guess, to bow season since we're in bow season right now. Compound, crossbow, how the deer react. That's a huge, a big indicator of how it was hit. You're going to get a time of day. When did you shoot it? You shoot it last night, this morning. So we get an idea of how long it's been. How far have you tracked it already? If you tell me you've already tracked it 1.5 miles, then that's probably not a good sign. Versus somebody who's, I've tracked it 60 yards and lost blood and backed out. So we'll ask about property lines. That becomes a big issue. If you're hunting near a property line and it goes onto a property that you don't have permission for, we can't track. It kind of ends right there. So we do need permission to cross property lines and get the deer. So you're going to be getting some quarter away is another important question. Another really one is, did you get a pass through? Recovery rates for pass through shots are significantly higher than non-pass throughs. So if it's a quarter shot and you say you got 3 to 4 inches of penetration and the deer carried the arrow, chances are it's just stuck in the shoulder and that deer is going to be fine. So there's a lot of questions just trying to sort out what happened at that shot site.
So you finally get there. You go through the factors. You realize, all right, here we are. I'm going to go out there and help him. There's a great chance of finding this. What happens once you get there? Where's the next step?
Well, so the first thing we're going to do, is we're going to schedule a time to meet. We're going to talk it out and come up with a plan. We get there. We're going to, majority of the time, going to want to start at the hit site. That gives the dog an opportunity to really get the full scent profile. So as an aside, and I won't go too far down the rabbit hole of like scent theory and things, most well-trained tracking dogs are not tracking blood. That's a huge misnomer. What we train our dogs to track is the interdigital gland, which is a gland in between all 4 hooves of a whitetail. And that scent, when a deer is hit and stressed out from the shot, actually changes. So that's how our dogs can track. If you shoot a buck in the middle of 5 deer, the dog will be able to sort out which deer is actually hurt and track the correct one. And so we're training on that interdigital gland versus blood. So, we're going to go out to the hit site, generally at the start, that lets the dog put together that scent profile to latch on to that interdigital gland scent. If there's blood, they'll latch onto that. The tracking world, we kind of say it's a scent profile. These dogs' noses are so awesome. They'll even go into crushed vegetation. So they'll be able to know a deer went this way based on the vegetation that's crushed and the smell of the grass or the leaves and things. They'll know the deer they're looking for went that way. So starting at the hit site gives us that chance to put the full scent profile. The other thing that's helpful is if a hunter has tracked and say they lost blood 100 yards into the track, marking with toilet paper, that really allows the handler to read their dog, how they're responding on that track. If my dog hits gets to the hit site and I have a marked trail of toilet paper and she is blowing right down that trail, I'm going to look back at the hunter and say, this is looking good. And so that really helps us know that we're locked on and, can make really short work to their last blood. So that's the kind of the start. We'll ask the hunters to stay behind us. That's usually, what the dog's leading the show at that point. Sometimes they start wandering a little bit and we got to corral them in, but trying to stay behind us. And if we have multiple hunters, we'll use them to kind of leapfrog additional blood that we might find, just so we can always have a spot in case we do need to restart our dog at a known spot on the trail.
I got you. So I guess, that you're in step 1, step 2, we're at step 3. So you're in the dog's tracking, you get in there, the dog's using that gland, right? And the dog's going strong. Dog loses scent. Where do we go from there?
Well, that's where the restarts come in. Particularly this time of year with the rut, there's so much smell in the woods. There's so much buck smell. We've been on some tracks recently where we get into some bedding areas and it just stinks. And so we look for the body language of the dog to change. Are they coming and kind of checking every live deer trail? What we're going to do is we're going to try to get back to a known spot. That's where marking with toilet paper is so helpful, because we can go back to that spot and say, we have blood here. Let's get my dog started again. Now, one of the things that I'll talk to hunters about it is what to expect on my dog. And so for Denali, if we hit a spot at last blood and she doesn't take a firm line, so I'll be running on X and I'll have my Garmin tracker on as well. And I should have mentioned that PA, Maryland, we're all on lead states, so nobody should be running their dogs off lead. The law actually states we need to be on lead, so we'll run a 30-foot lead. So I'll have my tracker apps running, and at last blood, you'll see a nice straight line. She runs to it, and then she'll start casting about and it looks like a bowl of spaghetti on the lines. And that's usually a pretty good indication that the deer's not mortally wounded. That scent in the hoof has changed back. It's not stressed out any longer. She has no scent to go off of, and she'll spend all day out there if I let her to try to make me happy trying to track down a deer, but it's not going to be a dead one. And so that could, most handlers have pretty good reads of their dogs on when the dog's telling us it's a live deer.
So, and this is where you and I were different in our conversations a little bit, right? So, mine was you grid search, then you call for the dog. You said you call for the dog, then you grid search. So I think it's great that we're doing this, because I think more people need to know this. I think this is a fantastic.
Yeah. So
your dog's in, you're making the spaghetti on your Garmin, you're doing this. Are we grid searching now?
Well, so at that point, when we if my dog's not latched on and it's starting to look like spaghetti, now we're going to grid search. And I'll stay out there with you in grid search. And the added benefit is I like that. I'll talk about that graphic in a second. The added benefit with the dog is now you're grid searching with a nose. So we can be kind of strategic and play the wind. So we can start working downwind and start working our way upwind to see if my dog's nose. We've found them before where I think we've kind of, for one reason or another, struggled. We start doing a kind of controlled grid search, working up from downwind to upwind, and her head will turn and she'll pop right onto it, and there's the deer. So the added benefit of saving that grid search for the end is now you're not only grid searching with your eyes, you're grid searching with a nose. And that nose is going to be able to see, smell into thickets. It's going to be able to smell into places that we might not be able to see with our eyes. And so what that graphic is showing is kind of what a dog would be smelling when there's no grid search. So that deer with the stressed out interdigital gland is leaving a single trail going straight through that field or straight through the woods. And then when a hunter loses blood and they get their search party, they get 3 or 4 guys out there and they're trampling all over it. Now the dog is smelling something that looks like that image, and it can be really, really hard for the dogs to work through. And it's could be a dead deer, and the dog just is going to have a really hard time working through the grid searched area. So that's why we in the tracking world, when we hear like, oh, I had 5 of my buddies out here, we grid search for 6 hours. Our heart starts to sink because we know it's going to be so much harder for the dog. It's not impossible, but it's going to make what could be a 10-minute recovery take an hour and a half or 2 hours if the dog can even work its way through that grid search. So we really want to save the grid search as the last resort. And the other benefit is if our dog's out there and advances blood another 300-400 yards, and say we can't find it, and the hunter still wants to find it, and every tracker is going to leave some deer dead in the woods. I'm guilty of it. Anybody who does it is going to leave some dead in the woods. But it can refine the area to search. So we can say, we advance your last blood 500 yards. If you're going to grid search, here's the area that you probably will want to grid search in. So we can really kind of hone in a grid search if it's needed. Ideally, for the handlers and teams, we don't want that because we want to put the nose on the deer and find it. We want to walk you right to it. But that is an added benefit that we can kind of narrow down the areas where you might need to grid search.
So I love hearing that because that makes perfect sense. And I kind of thought that's where you're going with it when you said grid search after the dog, because I did figure after our conversation on Facebook that was due to, you're putting way more scent on the ground than need be. So you got multiple deer walking. Now you got people walking. Now you got tramping on it, turning it, twisting it. My God, flipping leaves over. Everything just makes it harder than it was.
Well, I've had it before where hunters will say, we didn't grid search much, and my dog will work and work. It looks like spaghetti, and all she does is keep tracking right back to the hunter's boots. And it's like, no, you've been putting this scent down. She's coming right back to your boots. Because what will happen is when you lose that blood, you're probably walking across that deer trail and you're picking up that interdigital gland scent or the other scents on your feet, on the bottom of your boots. And then every step you take, that's getting spread in a much wider area.
Right. Yeah, and that makes sense. Makes perfect sense, honestly. So tell me this. Tell me my do's and don'ts. So you're the dog handler, and you as a team. I mean, I know in this industry you have had many do's and many don'ts. So tell us the do's and don'ts of this.
Well, I guess I'll use my my 2 tracks on Sunday as examples of do's. We were super fortunate to have 2 hunters that handled the track absolutely perfectly. And it allowed us to recover. I spent more time driving than I did tracking on Sunday just to get between the tracks because the handlers handled it so well, and Denali was able to make short work of it. So, the hunter on Sunday morning was for a PA buck, and he shot it. He gave it 2 hours. He started from the hit site. He started marking every spot of blood with toilet paper. And it wound up, he got to he was probably about 75 yards in, and he found an empty bed. And that's never good. Why is this deer not in the bed? So he knew, I'm going to mark it. I'm going to get out. I'm going to call a tracker. I got an empty bed. I must have not hit this deer as well as I could, and something's gotten it out of the bed. So we show up. She makes short work around the marked trail. And we go 300 yards with absolutely no blood to the dead buck. And there's no grid search to work through. There was nothing. Yep, there it is. And it was just about as textbook clean a track as you possibly could have. And so, that was handled perfectly. And then there's the second buck. That's a Maryland buck, actually a nice public land Maryland buck. And same thing. Hunter knew. Arrow looked like guts. He was pretty sure the shot was back. Smelled and he tracked about 60 yards and said, something's up. This isn't right. And he backed out. And so, we come in on that shot. I want to say that was probably, we came in about 17, 18 hours post shot. And, she made short work right to last blood. And I think that was probably about 300, 350 of mostly bloodless. There's a little bit of specks here and there right to the buck. And the hunter's friend on that one was funny. He actually was timing us, and it took us 12 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And so we covered, 400 yards on specks of blood in 12 minutes for the hunter. If he would have grid searched the night before, chances are he would have bumped that deer. He would have pushed it. And so 400-yard recovery might turn into 800 or 1,000 yards, which is a lot more difficult. And would have taken so much more time because now my dog has to figure out where did this deer go through the grid search. Now, and so the dog, you can save a lot of time, save a lot of stress on these dogs by not that grid search can be, just a killer. So one of the things we'll say, and you'll hear it like tracking seminars across the country, is that, for these dogs, tracking is like taking the SATs for us. It's exhausting. They're trying to put a puzzle together mentally. And so not only can it be physically demanding on our dogs, it's mentally demanding on our dogs. Because they are really trying to solve a problem in the woods. And when it's, just like for us, I'd much rather solve 4 + 4 than start putting letters and curvy things in my math, so trying to keep it nice and simple, it just helps us out a lot.
That's a great way to put it, honestly. So that's do's. Tell me don'ts. Tell me what you run into often people are doing here that you just are like, stop, please just stop.
So the tracking too soon and pushing the deer. If you go 150, 200 yards and you felt that you smoked him, you probably didn't smoke him. We hear it all the time on the phone calls when we were doing the interview. I know I smoked him. Well, you probably didn't because you're calling a tracker. If you smoked them, you probably don't need us. Unless you're colorblind or something like that. We've had a few of those where the hunter's colorblind and just can't pick out the red, and dog comes out and usually makes short work of it. But so, don't push the deer. Blood is seductive. You want to keep following it. You got a blood trail out to 100 yards, 150, 200 yards. Why is this deer going that far? And so back out. If you gave it the 2 and you're at, 200 yards tracking, back out, give it another 4, give it another 6 hours, call a tracker, come up with a plan, show us the arrow. And so just, giving it that time and not tracking. Mike's chiming in, so much blood. I know he's dead. Yep. We hear that a lot. A lot of blood to hunters is not a lot of blood to us. And honestly, as trackers, I'd much rather have little blood because if you have a really heavy bleed and then it stops, why? And a lot of times that's going to be a muscle shot and or a high over the backbone, over the shoulder shot, and it's just going to bleed a lot, but it's going to clot up, and there's no deer to be found because the deer is going to be fine. So don't wait the proper wait times. If you're not sure how long to wait, call a tracker. We hear a lot on the wait times about coyotes, and yes, we got a lot of coyotes. There are a lot of coyotes in PA, a lot of coyotes in Maryland. Coyotes track these things the same way our dogs do. They're going to either wind scent your animal, or they're going to cross the same interdigital track that our dog is tracking. And if that deer expires 300 yards and you leave it overnight and to track it the next morning, those coyotes got to intercept that 300-yard line. If you go out that night and you push that deer and it runs another 800 yards, now you got an 1,100. I do mental math, 8 plus. Yeah, 1,100 yards.
Sorry, I like that.
I just want to make for accuracy's sake. You're going to have an 1,100-yard trail that the coyotes have to intercept, and it makes it much more likely that they're going to find that animal. Wait times. Don't jump the deer. Don't push the deer. if you push it once, get out of the woods. We'll field calls from hunters. Well, I jumped him 4 times. Like, one of those jumps, he's just going to take off and go. And so that's, if you jump them, just get out, come up with a plan, figure it out from the, and talk to somebody and figure it out from there. Don't keep jumping them. Now, the one caveat with that is how close can you get? If you're 5 feet from the deer before it jumps up, it's probably hurt pretty bad, and it's probably not going to go too much further. That's kind of how we judge. But if you're 50 yards from the deer and you see it jump up and run, it needs a lot more time. So you can kind of judge how much longer you need to give that deer to expire by how close you can get to the jump. So if you can get right on top of them, then, they're not going anywhere. But if, you're jumping them and you're 30, 40 yards from it, it's probably got a lot of life left to it. So that's don't number 1, proper wait times. Don't push the deer. Don't jump the deer. If you happen to, back out, don't get seduced by the blood. And then that kind of leads into the don't, which we kind of talked about a little bit in the grid searching. If you get to a spot, look, 10, 15, 20, 30 yards around. If you don't find any more blood, get out. We know almost that, I shouldn't say every, but we're as trackers, we're expecting there to be some level of grid search at the end of every blood trail at the point of loss. We expect there to be some level of grid search. But if you don't, keep it small. If you don't find it, get out. If you've got on X, track your grid search. That can be that tracker feature is great. And so, if you got to search around at the end, track it. So we can tell if my dog's stuck in that area, we can work it around the perimeter to try to figure out where that deer actually went. So that can be helpful for us if you are going to search a little bit. But, so preferably don't push them, and try to avoid that grid search at the end.
That's great advice. I love it. So I got to ask this: what is you got to give me a couple of your favorite ones when people call, what they say that just, you have to. I know you have some good ones there. You got to. I know you get these calls and someone says something and you're just like, God, this is not like.
Yeah. Oh, so the thing that kind of starts making our heart sink is, my arrow's sticking out of them. I know I got them. I got 3 inches of penetration. If it's a mature buck, you didn't get him. He's got 3 inches of meat on his outside of his scapula. You just hit the scapula, and that deer's not gonna die. So that one's always kind of me and 5 buddies grid searched. That's always kind of so we hear those things a lot. It doesn't necessarily mean we're not going. I always say I'm up for a challenge. I'm a sucker. I'll come out, and if you really want us out, I'll pretty much track anything. But I'm gonna be honest with the hunters on the phone and say it's gonna be a tough one. I don't know if we're gonna be able to find it. I'm willing to run it, but I don't know if we'll find it. But I don't have anything particularly that sticks out at I know this deer is dead. I smoked him. That always kind of puts a little pressure on us because we got a hunter that we're gonna maybe have to convince that his deer might not be dead. That's always a hard one. But usually by the time we're done and we've spent 3-4 hours out there looking for an animal, and my dog's making the track look like spaghetti, and I'll pull up an example of, this is one we found. It's a nice straight line to the deer. This looks like a bowl of spaghetti. These are the ones we don't find. And that usually, I don't have too many people who are upset with our, that's a good one from the other night, and crazy wind. But you see, it's pretty much a straight line. That one little spot by that field that's kind of squirrely was just because of the wind. and she overshot where that deer actually did that cutback. And once she actually got downwind of it, she used the wind in her favor and walked us right to that deer. So yeah, but I mean, they are, yeah, it was a nice wide one, but yeah, so that's yeah, but yeah, the smoked them is, we never like to hear that.
Smoked them. So it sounds like smoked them is the one that just doesn't work well.
Yeah, you see it on Facebook every now and then, like the worst hunting phrases, like didn't go 20, smoked them. Yeah, smoked them up is always, or I know it's dead. That's like, not really, because you don't have it in your hands. I don't know your deer is dead until our hands are on it and my dog's chewing on it.
So the least likely shot that you're finding in percentage rates here. Tell me, from my own experience, I'm gonna tell you my own experience. My own experience is shoulder shots.
Yeah, shoulder shots. That's, if that arrow's stuck in that shoulder, the odds of recovery are just going to go drastically down.
I'm sorry. Did you see Mike's comment? One of my favorites. How good is your dog? Yep. He's as good as your shot was.
Yeah. We always say in the tracking, we need good bad shots, not bad shots. So, and I just start thinking, I'm a nerd, so I start thinking of it just in science. You know, to really drop a deer, you need 2 organs, and so a muscle's not going to kill it. I mean, we can get shot through our muscles and we're fine. You know, so a muscle hit isn't going to kill a deer. Now, if you somehow happen to get an artery, so if you hit them in the ham and you get that femoral artery, or, you know, then sure, that's going to kill it, but it's not the muscle. It's the fact that you hit a major artery. It's going to cause that deer to bleed out. And a mature whitetail needs to lose, I believe it's in the neighborhood about 48 ounces of blood. And I don't know if anybody's seen 48 ounces of blood. That is a lot of blood. So when a hunter says I have good blood, no, you don't. You know, that the blood hunters see on the ground is, you know, typically on a track, I would say is under 8 ounces. A little bit of blood goes a long way. And so, you know, a lot of times the ones we're tracking, the blood's internal. You know, we see that all the time where the deer bleeds internal. So, but the least percent shoulder shot, marginal penetration, just low odds. I'd say the second we get called out a lot for is, you know, either through the high over the spine, in that what people call no man's land. You'll find some debate on that. I don't really believe there is any space under the spine in kind of no man's land. Typically when people are saying that, they're over the spine. On the anatomy of a deer, the vertebrae dip down right at the shoulders. And so there's a big space there that you can go over and not enter the thoracic or the cavity. And so, you know, it's over the spine, and it's just going to be a lot of blood. Typically you'll find a lot of blood, but it's going to go from, you know, about 2 fist size pools to drip. And then it might pool again where the deer sits, and then it'll go drip. And so that's a pretty typical blood trail of something that's been shot high over the spine. Along with that shot is the classic back whack that people will talk about. You know, where the arrow or the bullet will actually hit one of the spinal processes, which is part of the bones that stick up off the spine. And those stick up on a mature deer. They could stick up 6-8 inches or more. And if you hit one of those, it'll temporarily paralyze the deer. And that's so the deer will drop instantly. And that's when the hunters are all high-fiving, and next thing you know, the deer jumps up and runs, and they can lay there paralyzed for, you know, a couple minutes to a couple hours. And there's some videos floating around online where there's a deer laying there, somebody goes up to grab the antlers, and next thing you know, it jumps up and runs off. And that's a back whack. It hit that spinal process, and it temporarily paralyzed the deer, but that deer is going to live, and it's going to be just fine. So I always will tell, if you shoot a deer and it drops right away, shoot it again. No, you're not going to hurt anything. You're just going to go and be out a round of ammo if it's rifle season, but shoot it again if it drops instantly. A lot of times that is a back whack, and that deer is going to get up and run out of your life. So,
Michael just had Chris, can you
a
pull that
frontal
back
shot,
up?
right?
Yeah, he asked, do you recommend frontal shots?
Absolutely, Mike. No, absolutely not. The shape of the rib cage on a deer is like a battleship in the chest area. So those full frontal shots, and you'll find people take them. I take them all the time. I drop deer with those all the time. If you thread that needle and you get it in there, sure, you're taking out lungs, heart, everything vital. With these powerful crossbows now, I mean, you might get it all the way in through the gut and exit out the rear. It's just there's so much error that can happen. I've passed on frontal shots myself that I've had. It's just not worth what can go wrong. And without being too sappy, it's like we owe it to the animal to take a better shot than that. I'd much rather let the buck of a lifetime walk away from me than put a shot on it that is going to wound it. And we might not be able to find it, but it still doesn't mean that deer might not die of infection, or coyotes can chase it down because it's in a wounded state. It's not worth the risk, in my opinion. So yeah, frontal shots, one of the worst. Archery, neck shots, you hear it all the time from people. I shoot them in the neck, they drop all the time. Maybe with a gun, in archery, you're relying on as big as the blade can cut, and there's just so much non-vital space up in that neck area that really we don't advise taking the neck shots either. So yeah, full frontals, not worth the risk. And same thing with neck shots. If you go from the shoulder, where the shoulder blade is, and you go back, just stay off the shoulder blade, get back a couple inches. The lungs are a big target. You don't need to take out the heart. If you take out 2 lungs, you're going to have a dead deer. And
I always say, I don't aim for a heart, I aim for lungs.
Yeah. Stay off that shoulder blade. It's drives us nuts as trackers, because that thing is a armor plate on these big bucks.
I tell my boy 3 inches off the shoulder, and I always tell him dead center of the body. If you hit that, you're dropping that thing. It's going to go down.
Yeah. And now you can get like super on shot placement. Ideally you want the perfect broadside. It's never going to be perfect broadside, and you want that near side leg to be forward. Because if that near side leg is back, sometimes behind the shoulder puts you right through the liver. And now you're going to have a much harder track job and potentially jump that deer, because that deer is going to need more time to expire. So ideally it's broadside, near leg forward. I know it's all happening so fast in the moment that things happen, but that's the textbook. And then when you start adding the angles, quarter away, quarter 2 shots with a bow, it's really hard to not wind up getting liver and gut. A lot of times for us trackers, what we'll see is either clip the near side lung through the stomach or liver and out the intestines, and the intestines will plug the exit hole, and that leaves you very little blood to track, because those intestines are plugging the exit. And that's when a tracker can be a savior in those situations, because the hunter might have nothing to go off of. And if not pushed, that deer should bed up within a couple 100 yards, and we should be able to find them in the first bed if the proper wait times are used. Like on my Sunday example, the hunter did push it out of that first bed on the one, but typically they're going to try to bed up within a couple 100 yards, and that we should find them right there. And then a quarter away shot, you almost have to be aiming behind the ribs depending on the angle. And in order to get the angle that you need to get, liver, lung, potentially heart, if you stay behind the shoulder on a quarter away shot, sometimes what you wind up getting is a lot of 1 lung shots, and on lead tracking, recovering a single lung hit deer is very difficult. They can go and go and go and go. And on my 5 years of tracking, I don't believe I've ever recovered just a single lung hit deer, just because they can go.
Wow.
So
we are very, very close to our time here. So
gotcha.
What I want to do is make sure people know where they can get a hold of you, where they can get a hold of you or any of your other, colleagues in the dog tracking industry.
Sure. You can, it's been scrolling on the bottom there on my Facebook page is a good way to get a hold of me. For Pennsylvania, there's a great statewide resource on PA blood trackers. It's broke down the list of trackers by county. And so you can kind of contact the trackers that are on that list by county. And we do a good job if, one tracker can't get to you. We know pretty much all the other trackers in the area, and we could kind of refer each other back and forth on tracks, because most of us do have day jobs. We can't do this, can't support ourselves tracking for 3 months out of the year. If we could, I would. So
Michael asked a question here. So before we go, let's answer this question. What are a few of your craziest experiences on track?
Well, probably the craziest is not realizing we were over a property line and having a gun pulled on us by the landowner. That was a pretty intense one. So that was we're going to get off that property real quick, and I didn't even maybe 10 yards onto his land before I realized it. So our bad on that one, but that was pretty intense. I'd say the craziest ones are when the deer's still alive. All bets are off at that point. We've come up on them, and one of the more memorable ones, I was crawling through a thicket, covering my eyes, covering my face, and next thing I hear this crazy thrashing in front of me, and by the time I look up, Denali's got the deer by one leg, it's kicking her with the other one, and we're able to get the hunter up and be able to put that animal down. But those ones are always pretty intense when you come up on a live one. So,
well, I do want to say thank you very much for joining us. You can also find our show on the Roku channel. So if you can refer anybody to that. You can find us on any of your podcast resources. So iTunes, Chris, help me out, iHeart, all those places. You can also find us on the YouTube link here as well. Facebook, and a lot of other resources. So, here at Big Sexy Outdoors, and we appreciate you. We appreciate your time. And I appreciate greatly you taking me through step by step and the do's and don't, because that's a big deal in the tracking industry. So I've lost deer in my life over the years, and I lost the biggest buck of my life. And I never called for a dog, and I wish to God I would have. And I really do. So, this is something for me. When I think of that, I think, God, this is, something we need to go over, because I don't ever want to see somebody feel what I felt that day again. So,
yep. Well, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to come on and babble about it. I always enjoy talking about it, and, spreading the word and gaining the knowledge that I think, to help hunters come up with a plan to recover their deer. They spent so much time spent in planning and practice and everything up until the moment of harvesting the animal, but there's not a lot of planning after that. And I think we're really focusing and getting more knowledge on what to do after the shot, because everybody thinks it's going to be perfect, and when, especially for archery hunting, it very rarely is perfect. And so what to do after the shot happens is just something I think there can't be enough spreading the word and education about.
I totally agree. I think this was a great show. I think we covered a ton of information, and I think that it should help anyone that watches in the industry here in archery. I always say the industry of archery hunting and hunting in general. Yep. It should definitely help. And not only that, it should help you trackers out. In the sense of, if somebody watches that, you're not doing the spaghetti patterns and all the extra stuff. So,
yep.
Again, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Please stay in touch, because I always tell everybody on the show, stay in touch. I'd love to have you on again. We can talk about a lot of other things.
Yep.
And anybody watching tonight, God bless. Thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we are out of here. Chris, roll me out, brother.